Okay, so then again, male and female homologs. Why talk about developmental biology? So nipples and areola, both women and men have that. So things that essentially at birth, male and female nipples and areola are essentially the same, but they develop differently. That's the whole point of this. So what we have here are mammary ridges, so milk line, also known as milk lines. And this is, so what we have here, these are the milk lines, and as you see here, you have nipples and areola all along these lines on the left and right. The thing is that, yes, actually when you develop first as an embryo, you have all these little buds here along these lines. But the thing about this, why don't you have 7 pairs of nipples and areola? Thing is that these are actually the milk lines start as embryonic mammary ridges, and these develop even before the 11-week point. You already have these lines when you're developing and before you even have the differentiation at 11 weeks between female and male. Now, the thing is that mammary glands and nipples develop along these milk lines, so normally you would have just these two nipples and areolas developing. But the thing is that most of these supernumerary, just like supernumerary testicle means above normal number, if you have any of these nipples or areolas developing, well, things that before you're born, these undergo apoptosis. So they did start out, but they eventually die off. So this is why in most people, you only have a pair. Why? Because the rest of them underwent apoptosis. So they kind of degraded over time before you were born. But how about Harry Styles here? So the thing is that, look at this. So whenever there's a supernumerary nipple, it's not going to appear randomly on like his shoulder or his neck. Supernumerary nipples tend to develop along these lines. It just means that something went wrong with apoptosis when hair was forming in the womb. So look at this. This nipple here corresponds to this nipple here, right, on the left. So, and look at this one. This one looks like about the same level as this one maybe over here. So again, if these do not die off due to apoptosis, then this will result in extra nipples. And again, I haven't seen anyone with 14 nipples, but if something goes wrong with this process, apoptosis, then in theory, they could have 14 nipples. All right, so what else? Again, remember, they start out the same, but development later on in life is. So now we're like way past birth. Now we're talking about puberty. So actually, before puberty, the mammary glands and breast tissue in females and males are relatively the same. But something happens during puberty. Again, that surge in hormones. So the thing is that you do have ducts in both the male and female, but a very small amount of the mammary gland and tissue is not fully developed. But what happens during puberty? Well, in women, what happens is an increase in estrogens and progesterone, and that stimulates the development of the mammary gland. Whereas in men, what happens? So then you have androgens, including testosterone. So all these androgens, instead of promoting the growth of mammary tissue, it actually inhibits the growth of mammary tissue. But sometimes, remember that aromatase? So if you have high levels of androgens and testosterone, if there's aromatase in the body, or there is aromatase in the body, but if it's at a very high level, what can happen is that you have production of estrogens. So often what happens in puberty, depending on the source, I've read anywhere from like 4% to just under 70% of pubescent boys actually develop temporary, what they call gynecomastia, which is actually development of this breast tissue. The good news is that in most of these boys that are undergoing puberty and developing this breast tissue, once they're past puberty and not experiencing elevated levels of testosterone and estrogen, then this tissue and eventually degrades and comes back to normal. But again, what typically happens? High levels of androgens in males and high levels of estrogens and progesterone in females. So what happens during puberty? Well, you still have estrogens and progesterone promoting the development of all these branches and ducts and lobules. We'll get to that really soon. So as you can see, now the mammary gland and breast tissue is developing in females, whereas all the high levels of androgens is keeping the development suppressed in a male. So again, as you have more estrogens and progesterone, this causes the development of the breast to start The mammary gland is not branching out more, it's gaining volume as well. So these two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are the main drivers behind breast development in females. So as you have more estrogen and progesterone, the mammary gland gets bigger and bigger. So what we have here is the mammary gland structure. I'm showing you a cartoon. So what am I showing in the previous slides when I show that growth? Well, here is what we have, a duct. So again, duct, just like any other duct in your body or just like a ventilation duct, is some sort of passageway. So this is where, again, this is where milk would flow through. So these carry milk, and estrogens, these stimulate duct development. So the more estrogen you have, the more branching of these ducts you have, the longer ducts, the more complex the network of ducts in the mammary gland is. So then this stimulates the duct development. Now lobules, these are what actually produce milk and store milk. So the progesterone stimulates lobule development. So rather than being a passageway, these are the ends of the passageway. And what do they do? These cells here help to create and secrete milk. So these are called alveoli. So again, alveoli look like little bunches of grapes. Totally different from your lung alveoli. It's again, same word. But it's just referring now to these little like cell clusters of cells that actually produce milk in the lobules. Again, they're like little small sacs, but instead of being filling up like air in your lungs, they fill up with milk. Now what happens if you have all these alveoli connected to one duct? When you have lactation, it fills up with milk, and then all this milk flows through this duct. So again, estrogens and progesterone, very important in making this network of both ducts and lobules. These are the basic functional units or building blocks of a mammary gland. Okay, so what we have here, again, we have little lobules at the ends of each duct, but notice that these ducts, they're not just one passage, they can branch multiple times. So as a woman develops during puberty, then you have more branching of these ducts and lobules. So what happens is that you have this extensive network. Now you have many lobules that can potentially generate a lot of milk. So the thing is that at this point, even though you're an adult, the breast is not actually fully developed. The mammary gland is only fully developed at specific conditions. And can you guess what those are? Yeah, so the specific condition, well, something has to cause it to, well, remember, estrogens and progesterone, those are the two main drivers of mammary gland development. So something else has to happen first that causes estrogens and progesterone to rise.